I'm your host, The Organic Guy. This is your home of organic conversations. This is where you get to hear from various thought leaders across the organic movement. And today I am super excited to be joined by Mr. Paul Holmbeck, who is the director of Holmbeck EcoConsult. Mr. Holmbeck has been the director and the political director of Organic Denmark for over 2 decades. He is also fresh from winning the Grand Prix One World Award for Sustainability. Mr. Holmbeck is also a candidate for the Organic World Board. So, Mr. Holmbeck, thank you very much for joining me in the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be together with the Organic Guy.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I mean, based on some of the achievements that you've done for the organic movement. So I gotta ask, really, when I look back at the early of your career, during the start of your career, you started off as a journalist and contributed, to some of the most authoritative news organizations. I'm talking about the New York Times and NPR. Do you think that kind of environment that you're involved on in early years of your career really prepared you to start your journey in the organic movement?
Oh, good question. Yeah, most definitely. I was involved in grassroots political work from a very young age, working on environmental issues, but also food issues, food justice issues, food collections, and things like that. So the work in grassroots work, also, working in low-income communities, organizing for political influence and for media attention on issues was all good training. And of course, the communication training, working as a journalist for radio and for print media in the United States, was also good training just in, how do you get the media's attention? What's a worthy story and those kind of things. So yeah, all those kind of things sort of combined.
Yeah. How was the transition really? Because I'm assuming you just moved from the journalist world and into the organic movement. Did you need a little bit of adjustment, or it was just a swift movement into?
Well, it was really. I've been a political activist all my life. So even while I was working as a journalist for the New York Times and for others, I was organizing in the low-income communities in which I worked. Working for more affordable housing, but we also were working on food issues. It was a food desert where there was just no food in the neighborhood. So we organized a food co-op and some buying clubs and community gardens, things like that. So I've always kind of been working on those issues. So the transition was, moving to Denmark from the United States was a certain transition, but moving into working with farmers, even though going from the inner city to working with farmers was something, but it's still about a vision and working together for influence and for affecting investment decisions and politics and so on. So yeah, I feel like I've been training my whole life for the work that I've done with Organic Denmark.
Yeah. So now take us through, when you've moved back to Denmark, how is the situation? Like, how is the organic situation there? Are people talking about organic? Is there some movement in Denmark already? People are sort of interested into becoming organic farmers or buying organic products. What is the context of organic when you move back into Denmark?
Yeah, when I moved to Denmark, organics was still very small. The market was so small, we weren't even on the statistics yet. The number of organic hectares was smaller than what, was half of what we converted in a given year now. But it was really grassroots work, some small organizations. There were 6 organizations at that time. Between the 6, I think there were like 3 or 4 staff people. Very, very grassroots offices. Our desks were old doors, and it was before email. It was just really grassroots, and the market was not that well known. So like even with we had our first children then, and I was trying to work with the childcare center to get organic food there, and the childcare center was too small to even order food. So we had to organize food buying clubs for the parents to get the volume up so that somebody would deliver food to us and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was really at not a very advanced level, but we've just come a long way since then.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I just try to envision and try to picture, that is some movement, because right now, considering you are sort of the light of the world, if you may, in terms of organic. If you look at the statistic, for example, 12% of the market there is organic now. So can you take us through, because you've been involved throughout this journey, you've been, the lead person in terms of trying to move this transformation. So can you take us throughout this journey? What did you actually do during this timeline to, bring organic from being just a fringe movement to now being sort of a mainstream movement in Denmark?
Well, the first we had to do was get organized. We had 6, and within a couple of years after I started, there were 8 organic associations. First, we moved all of those associations into one house. We established the Organic House. And 4 years later, in 2002, we merged all of those organizations into Organic Denmark. That was born there. And that made a huge difference. Instead of 8 chairmen trying to get attention in the media, we had 1. We had a clear voice. We had a very democratic system for making decisions. We were one voice on the market. So at that point, we could start building partnerships with retail. We were one voice with politicians. So they weren't like, oh, they're saying this, they're saying this. It was, a unified movement of farmers, food companies, food professionals, so people working in restaurants and public kitchens and so on, and consumers. So bringing together the whole production chain, but also bringing together the very different groups of organic milk producers, organic pig producers. So we're one voice, always with different opinions, because it's organics. It's the diversity is fantastic, but still one voice. Once we had hashed through things together. So that was one big step. And then just building capacity within the organization, because I think Denmark's a good case of that an organic NGO can really drive change. It can drive change in the market, in the media, in politics, and on farms. But to do that, we had to build capacity. So it was about not just money, not just resources and lobbying on the national budget and so on, but also the right capacities. So when we had some communication work, but when I wanted to build a marketing department that could really match retail, I had to hire people who had worked in retail so they could match them, speak the same language. And so step by step, we built up our agricultural technical capacities, our market capacities, our communication capacities, and our political capacities. So, and then the interplay between those, using our market success with politicians, because consumers are also voters, and using our political influence to increase resources, for example, to market development or new innovation for farms. So kind of making that cycle go upwards instead of kind of everybody waiting for everybody, everyone motivating everyone. So capacity building was really crucial. And then I think one of the really unusual things in Denmark is our approach is that we're very relation focused. So it's like, just like organics is not just a bunch of rules, it's about understanding the ecosystem. Politics is like that. The market is also like that. So it's about understanding and being useful for other parts of the ecosystem. So we went in and just started working with retail, and we were the first country where mainstream supermarkets really started expanding organics. But it didn't just happen on its own. We were working at the strategic level about what organics can do for their profile, and then working our way down into their organizations to broaden the assortment, and sitting with their lists of products and saying, oh, you need to fill these gaps, and then helping them communicate better with consumers. So by going in close partnerships with retail, we were able to really create that boom where now we have 30 to 50% of the food market for many basic products like, milk and a lot of vegetables and flour and oats and things like that. We have 30 to 50% of the market, and 80% of Danes buy organic food today. So, and that's just constant consumer communication and bringing the why of organic out to people. But all that demanded capacity in the organic NGO.
Yeah. I'm trying to look at from a market perspective, because for organic sort of to grow, people should want to buy it, should want to spend their hard-earned money to buying organic products. So maybe you can share with us. You mentioned it a little bit earlier of trying to communicate the why of organic. Maybe you can let us know why is that actually important in terms of trying to expand the organic market overall.
Yeah. Organics is more expensive, and that's the number one barrier. So people understanding that organics is more for your money. First people are thinking, oh, it costs more, but it's actually more for your money. It's about the substance of what it is. And so that's the message we've brought, and we've tried really in Denmark to have a positive communication about organics, all that it offers. And we have never attacked conventional farmers, or conventional farming. That's been important for our relationship to the conventional farm organization and for our farmers' relationship to their neighbors. I mean, they would rather play cards with their neighbor than argue about what their associations have been saying about each other. So it really, that approach kind of came from our farmers, that we don't want to attack. But, in any case, we do talk about pesticide, that we don't use pesticides. And there are still conventional farmers that definitely see that as an attack on their way of producing. But so we come with positive message to consumers about what organics does for the environment, for protecting our drinking water. We drink groundwater in Denmark. And that's increasingly, their wells are being closed because there's pollution with pesticides. Nature, biodiversity, animal welfare. And the approach has also been to confront the issue of price head on. That, not just, besides just talking about the value of organics, but also saying that cheap food is expensive. For all of us. So our farmers have been on the streets when, suddenly all the supermarkets are cutting the price on milk and driving the price down. So we've used that as a way a point of time to communicate to consumers and we passed out free milk and so said, we might as well give it away for free because the prices are so low now. And really that's bad for animals, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for farmers, it's bad for all of us. So, using that as kind of a moment to talk with consumers about the value of paying money, a proper price for food. And I think, that approach has worked so that there's a lot of confidence in the organic farmers and what they're doing.
I definitely do agree, because now you have to be transparent. Most of the times, we from the organic sector especially, we don't want to talk about prices, because that's one thing that we do know. Consumers relatively don't want to pay more than when they can get the same product, maybe on at a different price. And right now I live in the Netherlands. The organic market is very low. It's about 2% right now. But you can see, when you walk into supermarket, you can see there's a section of organic. There's some, specialized organic shops that you can go into and buy organic products. But you can see there hasn't been that traction sort of consumers willing to say, what, this is organic and I'm ready and willing to pay that. Maybe that has something to do with, the other day I was talking about director of Bionext, asking him, are Dutch consumers generally sort of not willing to pay more for products, and sort of confirm that myth. So there are, as you just say, there are different ways to communicate it, and you have to be ready and be transparent really with what organic can do beyond just price, which is, I think for me, it's also a good point to take home as well.
Yeah, and actually, we've also put a lot of energy into people actually coming out on the farms and experiencing organics. So it's not just words, it's also experiencing it. So we have every year we have almost 5% of the population comes out physically out on an organic farm every year. And that makes a difference. You know, they've got their kids they're talking with their kids about it. Once you've said it to your child that this is good, well, you know, then you got to do it.
True. The other point that you touched a little bit, which I find a little bit harder to deal with, is this in terms of policy. So, for example, back in Kenya, we've been trying to get an organic policy passed since 2008. It's been a back and two front, politicians say, this is a good initiative, we're going to look at it, sort of shelves it somewhere, and it's been up and for sort of confrontation with politicians in a way. But from your end, we've seen a lot of success, right? And you mentioned about a lot of, talking with politicians, even 10 out of 11 political parties listening to you. So maybe you can also help us understand what is the right way of going through talking with politicians, for example. What is the right political approach that organic policymakers, for example, should they try to approach in terms when communicating to political parties or political individuals in their organic advocacy, for example?
Yeah. Well, our approach has always been to start with what they want to do. And so with politicians from different parties, what's important to them? Because organics offer so much. It's good for rural development. It's good for the green agenda. It's good for water quality. It's good for health. So we try to tune into where politicians are. And if their whole issue is only about economic growth, then we will talk about economic growth. And that this is a viable way for farmers to get a decent price for their food. It places them in the right place in the market, that kind of thing. So it's really kind of an empathic approach to politicians. It's just like they've got problems to solve. They have visions and dreams. We want to help you solve that. And so that's been our approach. So now, we have support. It wasn't like this at the beginning, but we have support from 10 out of 11 political parties, but for very different reasons. And some it's just because it's a good export business, or for one of the parties, animal welfare is the main thing. And so that's been our approach. And then we've never forced them to choose between organics and conventional. Again, that's our communication, which has been positive, and we don't attack conventional farmers. So if we force them to choose between conventional and organic, they'll choose conventional, most of the political parties, because that's most of farming, that's most of the votes, and that's most of the economy in farming today. And we don't need them to choose, because essentially we're trying to build up organics. So we need resources to innovation, product, market development and other issues, and, training farmers. And so building up the organic sector requires taking some battles. We made the world's first GMO law that included compensation to organic farmers if their farms are polluted by GMOs and those kind of things. So we've had to take some battles, no question about that. Pesticides, problems coming onto our farms, et cetera. But mostly we've just been about building up the organic sector, and that's been a viable way to get broad support. And then following up and timing, and every time there's a major issue, like now a new biodiversity strategy is going to be built on, we get organics built in as a tool, because it's a good tool. So we come in and we say, okay, organics can be part of this. And then when organics gets built into a plan for rural development, for example, then there's also new resources to develop the organic sector.
So it's one way to get a policy, for example, but it's another way to make sure that it's actualized, for example, it's implemented. So I was wondering, from your experience, maybe you can share with us what are some of the things that when maybe an organization is trying to push a policy, for example, what are some of the things that they should consider? Because I'm thinking not all policies that are suggested are necessarily going to work. So what should an organization that is trying to push a given policy, for example, what should they do? What should they consider to make that policy become a success?
Yeah. Well, in order to get it designed right in the first place, I mean, it's good to be very active about precisely what it is a policy you're using. And then you can use examples if you have examples from other areas that have worked. That's a good cause. We've also tried to always have allies supporting it. So when we went in for a goal of 60% organic in all public kitchens, we came together with the trade unions representing the people who were working in the kitchens, and with health organizations. And so good allies shows politicians that there's broad support for this issue. It's not just the organic producers who want to sell more stuff. And it's also helps design things better, because different interests, they have a different perspective on, what the policy needs to look like. So then you end up with policy that is more tailored to the actual needs. So we had a lot of discussion with these, the people who were actually working in the public kitchens, and they're, people try to lead these large hospital kitchens and so on. What kind of policies will support you? And then we designed it on that basis. But then it was much easier to implement because it was made in a way that it made sense for the people who actually had to do it. And then implementation also requires follow-up with ministries and with, design of programs and dissemination of programs. I'm doing some advising with the ministry in Uganda right now, and they have the new organic law, which is fantastic. I mean, it's just the elements described in there, and the NGOs in Uganda have done a great job, really making sure there's a lot of good things in there. But now the real work comes, because it has to get financed, and it has to all the design on the programs and so on. So there's always there's always a lot of work in the follow-up, but then that's where the real change happens.
Talking about policy again, I would like to get your opinion on the right now the farm to fork strategy of the European Union, where they have a target of 25% organic land by 2030. What do you think about it? Do you think it's in the right path of being achieved before 2030 or by 2030?
Absolutely. And I think the organic movement, IFOAM Organics Europe, did an amazing job, lobbying for strong goals, but also strong substance that's also reflected in the new action plan, the organic action plan. It requires reaching 25% requires a whole range of organic policies in all of the member states. And the Commission has sent a signal that member states should do action plans for organics. I wish they would have required it, because in some states, our organizations are small, and we really need the ministries to be committed to doing organic action plans as kind of a platform to hear the organic sector. But, we need, besides, market development and training for farmers and extension services and other issues, we definitely need some game changers. And one of those in the member states is redirecting agricultural support to the environmental and climate issues that organic farmers are already doing a lot of. That will change the face of agriculture in Europe overnight if it's done seriously in the different member states. And then I think we need some game changers to level the playing field in the market also, like pesticide fees. We have pesticide fees in Denmark, which have, it adds some it makes the sort of the polluter pays reflected in the price. And it's also helping farmers, move away from some of those pesticides anyway. And then with, the VAT, I mean, I think, that the EU can start by saying that it's okay for member states to differentiate for organic products and set the VAT lower on organic food. And then, of course, the member states need to do it. That would level the playing field. I mean, if we had in Denmark, we have a VAT of 25%. If that was cut in half for organics, we would have a number of organic products that actually would be cheaper than the conventional products. We would take 100% of the market for a number of products immediately. Sure. And just like now, it's sort of like, with some products are being phased out conventional in Denmark now, like bananas, for example. We've gone from, in 1 year, we went from like 30% of the market to 66. And now we're probably moving towards 100% of the market because they're phasing out conventional bananas.
Yeah.
So, the VAT issue would do that for a lot of products. So yeah, game changers. We need those too.
Absolutely. Talking about game changers, you are, a candidate for the upcoming IFOAM World Board, and in September we are going to have the Organic World Congress, and one of the tasks, for example, is to elect the IFOAM World Board, and you are a candidate for the IFOAM World Board. So maybe you can let us know why. What was the motivation? What was the why behind deciding to be a candidate for the board?
Yeah. Well, the motivation is that I want to help.
Yeah.
The IFOAM is so important at the international level, setting organics and agroecology centrally in the whole sustainable food agenda. And there's a real battle going on around the whole world about defining what sustainable food systems are. We have sustainable intensification, that means more pesticides and GMOs and the whole package.
Yeah.
People are redefining regenerative, where you still use pesticides. So there's this whole battle going on. We need IFOAM Organics International to be continuing to set organics centrally in that agenda.
Yeah.
And I've seen just the power of the work that's already been done to influence decision-making, research, and other issues, where now we have, UN Food Security Committee, we have the FAO, we have the climate panel pointing towards agroecology. That's like strengthening for all of us in all the different countries about we can say, hey, look, the world is starting to point at agroecology. So that's one thing. The other thing is I have so much confidence that our members can be strengthened in their work. We have so much talent out there, but it's clear that we need to build capacity in our NGOs to drive change. And by training and sharing best practice, like the farm family learning groups in Uganda, we've taken those back to Denmark. It's one of the most often used methods now to spread knowledge among farmers. So it's like just spreading lessons around the world will strengthen our movement. And the stronger our members are, the stronger our movement and our organization is. And there are 23 people running for the board. And I respect them all. And I think, there's a lot of really qualified people, but, I'm hoping that I'll get one of the 10 seats there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at, for example, you have a support letter from Vandana Shiva, Biofusion Foundation, for example, Organic Sweden, Organic Denmark. I think these are people who have already seen what you can offer to IFOAM in a global level. So I'm also looking forward to it, and hope you all the best and become one of our next champions who will be leading the organic movement in the next 2 to 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing the insights and some of the wisdom that you've gathered for all these years packaged really densely in a short period of time. So for me, it's been an absolute pleasure, and looking forward to meeting you in person in one of the organic conventions, so for example.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for your work and spreading good lessons around the world.
Thank you.